Welcome to Hunt, Harvest, Health, the podcast with your host, Ryan Lampers, aka the Stealthy Hunter.
Howdy.
And myself, Dr. Hillary Lampers, where we share our love for ancestral living and the health topics of the modern age. Ryan is the well-rounded bearded brawn of Hunt, Harvest, Health. His knowledge of backcountry adventure, western hunting, and our household status as garden guru and super dad really defines our gut stealthy lifestyle.
Doc Hillary is definitely the brains and beauty behind all of this. She kind of makes everything happen, as I have zero technical skills. Hill is just a wealth of knowledge in all things medicine and nutrition, which not only keep our family healthy, but they help me stay strong in all my mountain adventures.
You can follow us at huntharvesthealth.com, Instagram, and Facebook for more podcasts, recipes, and stories.
All right, let's do this. All right, howdy folks. Welcome back to the Hunt Harvest Health podcast. It's been a while. I'm trying to figure out and remember how to record a podcast. We just pulled out the gear. We've had a long hunting season, so we've kind of been slackers as far as getting podcasts out, but we've got some stories, and we wanted to start recording some of the hunts we've been on. And so today we've got Joey Pyburn. He's been on the podcast before. We've got Ryan Balas.
Never been on the podcast before.
Never been on the podcast before.
Never been on a pod. He's a podcast virgin.
I am a podcast virgin.
Oh, wow.
Cherry's been popped.
There you go. Done and done. So we all just got back from our Washington mule deer hunt. And while it's fresh in our memory banks, we thought we would sit down. We are at Ryan's house right now, and we were going to kind of just tell the story from start to finish. I think it's a pretty good story. I think we all had a blast on this hunt. So why don't you introduce yourself, Ryan, since you have never been on the podcast before?
Well, I'm Ryan Balas, the other Ryan. It's my new hashtag. But Joey's neighbor. When I meet you, 5 years ago.
Yep, probably 5.
Something about that. Joey took me on my first backcountry hunt. I've been a hunter for, since I was 14, so a long time. Haven't killed a lot of critters, but Joey took me on my first backcountry hunt and backpack hunt, really, and I've been hooked.
So get into what kind of hunt you did before you're into Mr. Pyburn here.
Now that I have been hunting with you guys, the one thing I didn't do is I didn't sit in glass.
Yeah.
Dude, that's the number one thing. I mean,
so how did you used to hunt? Like, what was your go-to?
Like camp, everything. What like?
Yeah. So we would set up a base camp down low, and we'd have the Honda 90s, and so we'd set up base camp down low. Wall tent type setup, full-blown kitchen,
Nice, comfy camp.
Yeah, real food. I mean, we have real food now, but like heavy stuff. And we had the Honda 90s, and so we'd blast up the road and basically get to a trail. And it's funny, we'd get up there, and I was just talking to my dad about it the other day, but it'd be sunny out, like it's cold mornings, and the sun would hit the side of a hill, and we automatically think, I know I did from the time that I was 14 and blah, blah, blah. Hey, I'm cold, the deer are cold, they're going to be in the sun. And, so you'd see does show up in the sun, and you're like, where's the buck? And the buck would never show up. I'm like, dang it. And so, year after year, I think it would be that way. I mean, granted, I did shoot a buck up there my first year, a dinky little spike, which I'm still super proud of. But
so was he out warming himself in the sun that day?
That was, I think at like 1:00, and my dad and brother were asleep. And I wasn't going to sleep because I'm watching for deer. And sure enough, these deer came feeding out of some timber right into a clear cut. And I woke my dad and brother up with my 7mm mag going off. And this deer was, I don't know, not very far away, 150, 160 yards away. And my first shot was low, took his front leg off.
Yeah.
And it started running. And by the time, this time my dad's up. And that buck is, trying to run.
Did you shoot offhand, or did you get a nice steady rest?
I shot offhand the first time and, blew his front leg off. And then he starts running. My dad and brother are up, and I'm like trying to shoot this deer when it's, trying to run, hit it way back. And then it fell down, and that was it for that deer. But, didn't shoot any more deer in there for a while because my tactic of I'm cold, the deer gotta be cold, the bucks never showed up in the sun.
Yeah.
And so, my brother shot a couple, in a few years, but that wasn't a very good method. And now I look back on what I did. There was clear cuts. There was glassing points that we glassed from, but where am I looking? I'm looking in the sun. I'm not looking in the shade. And so it's crazy because I was telling you, Joey, it's like I think I could go back in the spot I've hunted for year after year.
Well, we were up there.
Yeah, and I hadn't killed a buck in there for, I took 2 deer out of there. I think my brother took 3 deer out of there. But we're talking 16 years hunting that spot.
Was there much pressure?
No.
Yeah.
No, and there was deer in there.
Yeah.
It's just not looking in the right spot.
Well, what's funny about that tactic is when you correlate it to how our hunt went this year, it's the complete opposite of how you were hunting.
It is.
Like they run from the sun.
They do.
They literally run away from the sun.
Yeah, they're like vampires. Yeah. And I was telling my dad that it's like, from what I've learned now, those bucks will be bedded in the shade. The second the sun hits them, they're up.
They get up and move. It's
crazy.
A great way to see what's on the hill because when that sun starts to drop, you have these vantage points where you are looking at the hill and there's, you never see everything. There's just no way. There's all these hidden little spots on the hillside. But as the sun moves down, those deer are tucked away behind a tree. The sun hits them. Man, they get up. Especially that early season when nothing's really happening and the weather was so warm. They get up and they're gonna move. They're gonna go find a shady spot.
Yeah. So no, it was not very much success. A lot of hiking around. I mean, we did hike a lot. I mean, I put the miles in, but I should have put the hours in glassing instead of the miles walking.
Right.
Saw a lot of elk in there. A lot of elk. But no, that's been my hunting style, and it's been, a lot has changed since starting to backpack, and the misconception of backpack hunting and backcountry hunting is because you're deep, you're going to kill something. And I can tell you firsthand that hasn't been the case. Now, sure, has there been opportunities? Yeah, sometimes there has, but it's backcountry, backpack hunting hasn't meant that I've killed a buck or I've killed the elk or I've killed a bear every single year.
No.
Yeah, just because you get remote doesn't mean that it's going to happen.
No.
For sure. There's still tactics that are going to work better.
Yep.
For sure.
Well, with getting remote, it just gives you like a better experience for the most part. If you can get away from the roads and the people, doesn't necessarily mean you're ever going to see more animals. You just don't have as many people.
Yeah.
I love not seeing people.
Yeah, exactly. The experience of it. I mean, I absolutely love it. Like I could never not backpack hunt. Get deep in there.
I remember taking you up there that first.
Yeah,
bear
what
hunt.
was the first one? It was a bear hunt.
It was a bear hunt
that you took him on. Yeah,
and it was a grinder. It's a 5,000 feet.
Yeah, and like what
elevation gain?
2.5 miles.
And that was
3
here
miles?
in Washington.
It's here in Washington, yeah, the west side, and just a very short, not very many miles.
Yeah,
maybe 3 miles.
And I was in shape, like general shape. I wasn't in backpacking shape.
And I think I had asked you at that point, like, hey, you're in pretty good shape. Yep, I work I think at that point it was like a Stairmaster or something, a treadmill. You had something here you were doing.
I did. What did
you weren't going to the gym yet.
But
and then we were only going in for a couple of days, so our packs weren't terribly heavy. We left it kind of at night, and it's 60 something switchbacks going up that thing.
Yeah, it's a lot,
and it was a grind. We got up there, and then I think the next day.
Well, we didn't even make it all the way up there. My quads were seasoned up. And I just remember asking Joey, "You're not tired?" You're like, No, I'm like, crap, man, I'm such a wimp.
Well, I mean, that's a rough one to do right out of the gate because it's just climbing the whole way, and it was
you
like
guys
80 degrees.
How many days were you guys heading in? You guys had some weight too, probably, right?
Yeah, maybe
I don't know,
3
3 or 4 days, and that was my first trip. I just bought that Kuiu bag, and like so everything in it was new. I had a heavy sleeping bag, which
Yeah, and I don't think I had checked his pack either.
Mm-hmm.
Which that's always a good thing to do with a new guy. To be like, hey, let me feel that thing. Be like, hey, what's
But
this in here? You have a what is that? A cast iron fry pan in there?
No, but it was like 2:30, and we got to that first saddle, and I
Yeah,
was like
2:30 in the morning.
2:30 in the morning, and I was like, I can't go any further.
Well, it was also like 80 degrees, so
Mhm.
you leave the trailhead.
Yeah, this is
You
August,
were
right?
Yeah,
cranking,
it was.
Yeah.
sweating, man. I mean, you're pouring sweat. So you kind of started to seize up. You had
So I
started
was
having
season
cramps or
up,
something.
and so we did stop. But granted, it was 2:30 in the morning. I think we pushed.
And we made it pretty much the whole way up.
Yeah, yeah.
We stopped it just below the top. And then the next day we were like laying in this berry field, munching on berries, overlooking this crazy amount of country, just
And
amazing.
I'd never experienced that. Like
And
I'd
he's
never
like laying there and
crunched.
he's just like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, I have to do this all the time now.
Yeah, I was hooked right then.
Oh, I could
but
tell. I looked over at him and he just had this big googly look on his face. I was like,
with
oh man,
blueberries
this
all
guy
over his
is,
face.
Like, so this is
He's
why guys
in.
like backcountry hunting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and we didn't see a bear.
And isn't that when we got smoked out, or was that the next year?
No, we got smoked
We
out.
got smoked out. Yeah.
Yeah,
Bad.
didn't see a bear, but man, that was all it took. He was completely hooked. He came back and started working out like furiously, and he's never had an issue since.
No.
Now you got to try to slow the guy down.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, since you hooked up with Joey, you've had some hunts. You've had some trips.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I did my first out of state solo hunt,
Yep.
Nevada last year.
We both did a trip down to Nevada at the
Yeah.
same time.
Yeah.
You got you got your first archery buck down
That's
there,
my
wasn't it?
second archery buck. That little button buck right there was my first.
Oh, that's right.
And then, that was my second archery buck, which I mean, day 9 deer
Yeah,
solo,
you worked
Nevada.
your tail off
Yeah.
on that one. Yep.
Yeah, I don't care if it's not a monster.
No,
No.
that was super cool.
Yeah.
And then after that, what have you gone to?
Well, after,
we went to Montana.
Did the Montana
yeah, we did
trip
Montana last year.
and got you a pretty good muley.
Yeah,
He's right there.
yeah,
He's up
that
there.
was a good buck, and that's by far my biggest buck. I've shot, and I remember just seeing that thing. Because we passed on that big regress 2 point on the way in.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm not gonna packing this thing out. I was like, man, I should have shot that big regress 2 point because that was a big cool buck. But in my mind, I'm like, I want points, I want buck, but it didn't take anything away from that. So that was
fun because
awesome.
we were eastern Montana, so we were seeing some deer. I think we saw some whitetail bucks going in.
Yeah, before we even
Yeah, and then we set up camp and then just bombed out from there, and we were seeing a lot of bucks, every day, and then you picked that buck up, had some does, bedded down,
Yep.
and put a stock on him, and
Yeah, it was like a
200-yard shot, I think it was.
Yeah, so that was good.
Yeah, that was a fun hunt.
And we had 3 bucks to try to get down in like 4 days.
Yeah.
Something crazy. So couldn't be.
Yep,
Not that
we
I
all
was going to be
tagged
super
out.
picky, but
That was good.
Yeah.
So fast forward to this year. This was kind of the pinnacle probably for you as far as a backcountry hunt, I would imagine.
yeah, it was. I mean, that for our deer hunt for sure.
Our Washington hunt.
Yeah. Yep. So we decided we would all 3 team up and go into. It's been a spot that Joey and I have played around with for years, and we're always kind of hitting edges and checking out new country. But basically, it's the same country, but we're finding new little nooks and crannies and bowls and ridges, and just keep pushing the boundaries. And so this is a spot that we'd wanted to go into, and so we brought Mr. Balas along with us on this one, and I think we made an agreement when we first decided that you were coming with us.
I had to test a flashcard almost.
That's right.
Test.
That's right. I think I pulled up my phone and said, "What are you going to shoot? Would you shoot this buck?"
Yeah, we're eating
barely
breakfast.
A 3-point.
Yeah, but it was like we're eating breakfast and Ryan's over there messing around on his phone and all of a sudden, hey, would you shoot this buck? Yeah, he's flipping through and then I caught on.
Yes, you would.
And then I caught on. I was like, oh, I know what you're doing. You're gonna dump me off here outside this parking lot, and I'm gonna have to take a car back if I say no. I'm not gonna shoot that buck. That's what's happening here.
We were still at that point. We were 90% sure we were going to take you into this spot.
90.
But once you started rattling off, yes, you're going to shoot the first legal buck that comes through. We said, okay, you're coming with us.
Well, there's good reason for that. You know, it's shooting 3 bucks up there, like trying to hold out and kill 3 nice big mature bucks is very difficult. And then everybody's holding out, and then what if you all kill in the last 3 days? You have 3 deer to try to get out of there, and man, it is, you know, it's not fun getting out of there.
No, I mean, it was a brutal trip getting out anyway. It would have been.
Yeah.
So Ryan's plan was, he just kept saying, we'll get Balas a buck on the first day.
Yeah. Pretty confident
we'll get it on the way in.
On the way in. This is our plan. Balas needs to shoot a legal buck. That way we can eat like kings for the next 7 days while we're back there. And that is exactly how it kind of worked out. It was crazy how that worked. Because, you know, we hit the trailhead. We had a good amount of climbing to do to get in there and some miles. And geez, that first day we kind of got there late. We only got about a quarter up the mountain, and we had to basically park it, set up camp. Didn't really want to blow anything out in the dark, so got up.
And there's no trail, so we kind of need to see where you're going.
And you know, we had the days. I think we had 8 days. I think it was to from start to finish. So it's not like we were rushed to get up in there and try to knock these critters down, but. Yeah, I think that first full day that we had, that first morning we picked up a couple bucks up on the ridge. Looked like shooter bucks, but we weren't quite sure. And then as we got further up on the ridge, we picked up another handful of bucks. Yeah. And that's when we decided to try to make a play. And by the time we got up there,
it was pretty much
to
evening.
Where we had glassed those bucks. Yeah, the light was starting to fade on us a little bit.
But it was perfect. So. It was like, we got up there, dumped our packs, and you were like, let's go shoot that buck.
Let's get that
buck. Before
that
we had those 2 bucks up on the ridge, up in the rocks, and
one of them was a really big 2-point. We were trying to put a 3rd point on that. I was looking for an eye guard.
Well, and you said, I think I see, and I thought I saw maybe something there too, but at that distance, he was kind of in the trees.
Well, the problem was the heat wave because it was so bloody hot, and you know, they were just we're on a ridge, so you're looking across country. We're not looking across a basin, and that heat wave coming off the ground was just too much, and I just couldn't quite get that little 1.5 inch, 2 inch eye guard on that buck, and that. Later, we come to find out he had one, and it was big old. It was an old regress 2-point, just an old mature buck.
Yeah, but huge body on him, big old monster buck.
Which is one of the things that you kind of struggle with in that country is some of the bucks, body wise, they're huge. So trying to figure out how big their rack is difficult because their rack may look small, but that's just because they're a 250-pound muley. So
well, when we saw that buck, because we ended up seeing that 2-point the next day up close, he came right down the ridge and was right there. He was heavy.
Yeah, he's an old
buck.
But anyway, so go ahead and tell the story on
your buck. I think we had originally seen those bucks. Were they up and moving around when we first saw them, and then we lost them?
I think
then we saw the bedded one.
He was bedded first.
They were bedded.
Then he stood up.
And then they moved around. But we didn't get to see all the bucks in there.
So we first picked up that buck. He was bedded, and then kind of stood up. We kind of got eyes on him.
Yep.
And we figured out. I'd seen movement up above. I think we saw we knew there's a couple other bucks in there. We just didn't really get good eyes on him.
But we knew that one buck was a legal buck.
Yeah, we could tell, and we looked at him for a while. He was bedded in there, and I think that at some point the reminder of the quiz that I had taken earlier in the trip had come back up, and I was forced to recite never pass on something. See, I don't even remember. I don't even remember what it is. Never.
I thought we ingrained that in your head. At this
never
point.
pass on something that you would shoot on the last day. Right? Never pass on something
the first day.
Yeah, never pass on.
Happily shoot on the last day.
There you go. I choose to.
We changed it a whole bunch of times too later.
Yeah, that phrase gets
morphs
mixed
around
and matched consistently.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you posted a total mix-up of
That's right.
Yeah, so
but for you, it was don't pass on the first day.
Don't pass,
you would shoot on the last.
And I'll be honest, like I did not want to shoot that buck at first.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think you knew that. I wanted to shoot a bigger buck. I'd seen that 2-point. I wanted to shoot that, and I was kind of bothered that we couldn't, make a point up on that thing. But really, once we started stalking in on that buck, and I had said, let's go after it.
Yeah.
It all changed because I was on a stalk. I was going to harvest this buck. And so I didn't really care at that point that it wasn't this, big buck because.
Yeah. And we still had a kind of a curiosity on what those other 2 bucks looked like. Cause I saw antlers, but I didn't see how big they were. They were still kind of bachelored up. So you just never know what we're going to come over that ridge and see. But
yeah, and true. And once we finally worked around there and got to that rock ridge, we popped up on it. We didn't even see the bucks. And that's when I think you went down a little further, Joey, and set up camera. And you're like down there, I don't see him. I don't see him.
I had a good vision of the whole little rocky valley. So when they weren't there, I knew they kind of had to be like right in front of you guys down in there.
So the very last time we saw those bucks, they were up and feeding, and they were kind of feeding up that valley.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what they continued to do. They just kind of got a little further up than we thought.
Yeah. And so we, when Joey was down a little further and he didn't see anything, Ryan and I kind of creeped up over that rock. And that's when I think you saw it right when we creeped over. The buck was, feeding down there in the bottom, and I was getting set up. I didn't really see it. And when I finally saw it, I'm set up on the pack, and I didn't hear Ryan say, tell me when you're going to shoot.
Let me know when you're going to shoot, because we're filming everything for Project Waypoint.
Yeah.
So, and we're horrible.
We're not camera guys. We're
horrible camera guys.
Amateurs.
Yeah,
for sure. And
so Rye's like, hey, let me know when you're going to shoot.
But
I can see him up there.
I've got my earplugs in at this point.
So he can't hear anything.
And I don't know, like, I think everything that I've shot, like, I get my gun up and bam, like that bear. Remember when I shot that bear? It was just like, I don't need to sit on it and rest. I get my sight on it and shoot. Yeah. And so I didn't hear Ryan, so I get set up, bam, shoot. And I think it surprised Ryan.
Oh, it surprised me. I was like, holy smokes, haven't even turned the camera on yet.
Get set, and I'm trying to find the buck, and Ryan's like, you're high. And I don't know, I must have just went over him. And so he's like, get up here,
dust cloud
come up a little further, because Ryan was set up about 3 feet above me. So I grabbed the pack, set the pack up further, get set up on him. I think you're filming at this point. And
this time I'm just letting it roll because I don't know when you're going to shoot.
Yeah.
You're not going to warn me.
No warning. And so, shot, dumped him right there, and he rolled down the hill. And I mean, that was, like I said earlier, at that point, I didn't care that he wasn't a big buck. I was excited because, like, when I'm looking at him through the scope before I'd shot the last time, and I told you guys, like, he's got, I don't even know what I said. I probably said he's got like some junk or something, like his rack is curly or curved or something like that. And I just remember seeing that, and just, maybe that was me telling myself, he's a cool buck. Because I'm going to shoot him. And it was. And so.
Yeah. As soon as you looked up from it, you were excited. You said he's not huge, but he's got some cool waves to his rack or something like that. He's all curved up.
So when you guys popped over there, because I was down below filming, so I'm just filming you guys. I can't see deer or anything out there. Could you see other deer?
No. Well, was there 2? There was 2 down there the first time.
Yeah. So 2 went down. That one stayed up. And apparently Joe saw
So
3 go down. I
yeah,
think
3
it
went
was. So
down.
we missed one.
Yeah. So and you
they went down, and one wasn't. It wasn't like the one was much bigger than the buck you shot. He was just had a little bit bigger frame.
sure.
I think they were all somewhat same age category. They were still bachelored up.
Yeah.
Definitely. So typically they kind of run together
That big giant 2 was clearly the big buck in that
on the mountain.
group.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Yes.
He kept himself separated. I think he was actually hanging with a
little
Another little
2-point.
2-point.
Yeah.
Well, and then he was by himself after that.
That next day, you guys saw him. He was by himself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
that deer's down. We go in, break him down, get back to where our packs were and stuff. In the dark.
We kind of figured we'd be camping there. We figured
Yeah.
we're probably going to get this buck. We'll probably camp here. There's somewhat of a flat spot. We had to move some rocks.
Yeah, we
Yeah, we just
dug,
kinda
we dug
improvised,
some
but-
rock beds.
Which we've done it before. You just kind of dig out kind of like a nice deer bed.
So
Yep. Yeah, so we got back to camp and
got that meat
hung
hung.
that buoy.
And I came up with a pretty wicked plan that night. Actually, it was the next morning. It came to me. I thought, you know what?
I don't even know if it was that.
Bayless
Yeah,
is
maybe
in
it
really
was the
good
next
shape.
morning.
Let's get that deer off the mountain.
Let's grab some hunks that we can pack around with us and chew on this thing all week. But no, it was so bloody hot. And up on that ridge, it was even hotter. So we kind of figured the best thing to do would be to get that buck down to the creek bed.
Down to the
back
trail.
towards the trailhead, but there's a nice, cool north slope creek bed down there that. And look, you're in great shape. So what the heck? It was
I mean,
only
what, 3.5
hours
miles
to get back down to the bottom. 3 hours, I think.
Yeah, I think it was 3.5 to where I hung the deer. Yep.
Yeah, it's a grind.
And it was a grind.
And
I mean,
then Ryan wanted you to go back to where the trucks were at the trailhead to bring us
We had left some fizzy water at the truck, which is always
Not
a
a
treat
lot,
when you
just
come out.
one apiece. So you hiked another
and
mile
were there
and a
cinnamon
half.
rolls still down? No, we carried all the cinnamon rolls up.
No, we had the cinnamon
That's right,
rolls
we
with
did.
us.
And so, well, you guys were like, yeah,
Ryan's-
it's only a
Bayless's
quarter.
wife had made some delicious cinnamon rolls, and we were
We
fortunate
packed
enough
up
for
9 of them.
Bayless to pack all those for us during the trip.
9 cinnamon rolls. And you know, when you're packing your pack at the trailhead, the 9 cinnamon rolls doesn't really feel heavy. But then when we first each had our 1 cinnamon roll, and I'm feeling the 6 that are left, I'm going, this is stupid. You know, this is like 2 pounds of dough.
They were really good, though.
Those were some heavy cinnamon rolls.
They were good, but
She
yeah.
should have made some for us to have while we did this podcast.
I know. I'm surprised we're not eating any right now, actually.
yeah, that would be really good.
Yeah.
But
So-
so I packed that buck off the mountain.
Yeah, that next morning you went, got the meat out of the tree, took off down to get our fizzy water. Joe and I decided to go up ridge and
we'd
get
set up
over
a
into
kind
the
of a
basin.
spot to meet because we knew it would be late in the evening when Bayless was able to
Yeah,
make it back up.
That's
yeah, I
an
mean, it
all-day deal.
was. Yeah, it was. I mean, I think it took like 3 hours to get down, and then it was probably more to come. Well, maybe more to come up. 4 hours. I don't know.
Well, you left in the dark in the morning, and you got back
about dark.
About
dark.
Yeah, about dark.
Yeah.
No, it was a grind. Not gonna lie.
But Joe and I decided to go up, and we had this, master vantage point up there we wanted to get to. It's overlooking a big old basin, and that's kind of where we had set our hopes on finding a big old buck. And man, we no sooner got up to that ridge, got set up, and I think Joe spotted the first deer, spotted a few does down on the bottom. And then, it seemed like a minute after that, all of a sudden you spot a good buck.
Yeah, a decent buck.
Yep, good buck on the far ridge. And he was kind of working his way up towards this little saddle. And then I think we watched him go up onto the saddle and up and over, and then look down ridge from that. And there was an even bigger buck.
Yeah.
And then they kind of met up, and they were buddies.
Yeah.
They were just kind of hanging out.
Yeah.
So, we were at that point everything was pretty evident. The rut isn't really happening, and we weren't really expecting it to, because first off, it was a hot weather week, and I think that was what, October 16th, 17th?
Yeah.
That would have been the 17th.
17th.
So it's still really early, and we've got no cold weather to speak of. We had some earlier, but then it just went bone dry, no snow, full moon,
Nothing in the forecast.
60 to 65 degrees during the day.
Yeah.
And then
So the rut was not to be expected.
at night it was like 38.
Yeah.
I mean, it just horrible conditions.
And we've had years in that country where, by October 20th, they are rutting hard and they're chasing does, but that's, the cold weather years when we get good snow and just cold frozen nights and it's all popping back there. But this was not that year.
Mm-mm.
So go ahead and tell the story on how we, our game plan on those 2 bucks, because you had spotted them.
Yeah. So one was a real big buck. He was a big buck. The other was just a really good 4. And we decided they're way on the other side of this big basin, like right up on the top of the ridge. And so we skirt around, dump our packs or our gear, and then drop in. And, we had tons of cover, so we pick our way down and then cut across and come up. They'd actually, at a certain point, went over the ridge because they bedded. The big buck bedded right on the ridge for a while. And the other buck kind of fed around and then went over the other side.
Yeah, and we started that stalk. We could see that buck bedded on that little knob.
And then eventually he went over the other side. So we cut down, picked our way up there, kind of came up as high on the ridge as we could. And it's so loud and it's hot and the wind is kind of swirly and it just didn't feel like it was going to work out. But we ended up getting into position, kind of belly crawling up there, and Ryan picked him out. It was tough because we're looking now down into this kind of shaded ravine burn, and glassing into that burn in the shade. It's like dark, but he picked up those bucks. So we had them in there. They're both bedded, but it's like just under 200 yards away, and no shot or anything. You could see like a nose, some antlers sticking up, and like
one of the deer I could see just his back end, and the other one I could just kind of see him silhouetted.
Yeah.
And sometimes, man, it's hard to pick bucks up in those burns.
And we dropped our packs, which was stupid.
We did.
Well, and the other thing, we didn't
I
have
hadn't
any
heard
water.
this part yet.
Yeah, we had dropped our packs because we wanted to be super quiet. Because we thought those bucks were going to be just up and over.
Yeah.
And we were going in for, it was going to be like 50 yards. So
we're going in for a quick kill too. Like we're going to pop up over that ridge.
But we popped over and they weren't there. They had rebedded and they bedded down into the burn. So.
And the other thing, we didn't have any water. There's no water up there. It's bone dry. It's like a desert. We had maybe, I don't know, a quarter of our Nalgene, one Nalgene. And so we get up there, we see these bucks, and now we're just like sitting in the burning hot sun on the top of this ridge.
Can't really go anywhere.
No, we're stuck.
If we go to one side, they're going to pick us up. If we go to the other, we're going to lose sight of them. So
we're just sitting on them. And I'm set up, rifle set up, Rise set up, and we're just sit there. We sit there for hours. And finally, I was like, I'm out of here. I'm going to go get our packs. You sit on these things. I'm going to go down so we can get, have some water and have some food. So I drop back down and strap his pack to my pack and come back up. At least then we had a little bit of food and water. Then we sat on them for another couple hours. And finally, it was like, we got to just make something happen because we need to go get water.
The wind started getting even
wind
more
is
swirly.
Yeah.
So basically, while I was grinding back
we weren't
up,
even thinking about you.
No,
We're thinking
but
about
you
those
guys are
bucks.
just sitting around watching deer.
Yeah.
That's
I was thinking about
we did
taking
talk,
a nap.
We did
Seriously.
talk about you. We were like, man, I hope he brings fizzy water.
Well, yeah, I think I said, I hope he doesn't bring just 3 fizzy waters, one for
whole
each of us.
case.
I want the whole case.
And I did just
Only
bring 3.
He ended up bringing 3.
But they were good.
But so Rye decided he's going to drop back off the other side. I'm going to stay on those deer, and he's going to work down the ridge and come up at so he has a different vantage point.
And the reason I did that is because I knew, only a couple things can happen. You are still set up with a good visual on them. I'm either going to screw it up and make some noise, and they're going to stand up and you're going to get a shot, or I'm going to get a really good vantage over there and I'm going to get a good angle on them. So either way, we're going to be good.
And that's exactly what happened. Is he came up over, whether or not it was you or what, but they did get up, and I'm on them the whole time, looking through the scope. Buck comes down, and I can't see head or antlers. I see his antlers as he goes through real fast, but then he stops. But I have perfect, trees blocking his hind quarter, trees coming down right in front of his front shoulder. But I got a good shot at his vitals, and I squeeze one off, and Buck runs straight down, and seemed like a hit buck.
And this was the bigger of the 2.
Yeah, it was the bigger buck.
Yeah.
So we sit there for quite a while and just quiet. He goes straight down. I could hear him bouncing down through there. Totally expected to go down there and find him, piled up. He's in the bottom of the basin there. But we worked our way down there. We worked our way out first, glassing down in. Never saw anything. Then worked our way down in there. Never found blood. Nothing. He bounced his way down, and I tracked him down the basin quite a ways. And I don't know what happened on this hunt with me, because I had some issues shooting more than once. So I don't know. I didn't take my rifle, and I actually had not shot the rifle that I used. I shot the other rifle. Ryan has 2 rifles, and I'd shot the Weatherby, and I was comfortable with that. I ended up shooting a backup rifle, and I don't know if that has anything to do with it. I don't know, but I missed that buck, and then that sticks in your head, and then it runs through your head constantly.
Yeah, because we were trying to figure out, man, how did that buck, how did he not hit
under 200 yards?
Under 200 yards. How in the world? Whether it was a stick that you just didn't see in the shade side of that burn.
Yeah.
Something. It just didn't make sense.
But then
But we scoured and looked and did our due diligence, and there was
quite
no blood.
honestly, then I'm in my head at that point, that's all I can think about is how do I miss that buck? But so we go down there, we go all through that thing, and we end up going to the bottom and going back out through the top end of that basin, and luckily we found a little tiny water hole.
Yes.
Oh, that was a dream, man.
Yeah, because we hadn't had water since the bottom.
No.
And this was day 3.
Yeah.
Technically.
And I had got water out of that basin on a scouting trip years prior, but it was grim. Water.
We drained the hole. When we were done,
flowing. It was just
it was a puddle.
Just a puddle.
And by the time Ryan and I were done using the cap off of our Nalgene's, we'd filled all our bladders, and the hole was pretty much dry.
And one of the reasons why, we wanted to avoid going into, there was an even better basin, the next basin over, but our concern was we were going to blow something out. that was the basin that had the water. It had the good water, the flowing water.
Mm-hmm.
We wanted to stay out of it for as long as possible till we had as much time to scour it with the glass as possible.
And since I'd already blown this basin up with my missed shot, we were like, well, let's just go in there and get some water.
We'll just go in here and we'll get some water out of it. And that's what we did. We filled up. Geez, we get 8-9 liters of water out of there.
We did, which was awesome because we needed to drink some water at that point. So we climb up out of there, get back to the ridge, and about the time we get back to the ridge, I glass over there and I see Balas coming up.
We see a weary man walking across the ridge.
A skinny silhouette.
He looked beat, but...
And by the time we got over there, he was actually in his sleeping bag.
I was, because I was sweaty. And, dude, I got up to that ridge, and it was blowing.
Yeah.
And I was freezing.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm getting my bag out. And, like... No sooner, like I was in my bag for 3 minutes, and then I see you guys. I'm like, can I just lay here in my sleeping bag for a little bit longer? Can you guys maybe walk that way and then come back?
What are you doing? Get your stuff packed
You're
up.
like,
We gotta go.
Let's go.
So we pack up our gear because we'd actually dumped all of our stuff there.
We did, and we had to go back to where we came from. And I think I was probably kind of rude to you. I was like, get out of your bag. Get your stuff. We got to go. We don't want to put our lights on yet.
Yeah, we don't want to turn our lights on.
We didn't want to kick our lights on. We wanted to get back to where we were going to camp and trying to, stay incognito, I guess. But
yeah, and luckily, you guys had your bag, your trash bag over there with gear in it, and it gave me time to get my sleeping bag put back in there. Because had you guys been ready to go, I would have been getting yelled at.
Yeah,
I would have been dragging my...
He was all nice. He gave us
$500.
And we're like,
no,
we got to get back across this thing.
Yeah.
We don't want to get seen.
So we cruised across this sketchy little trail.
With our headlamps off.
Yeah, no headlamps because we don't want to spook any critters. We're cruising. Got to beat the light. And we get over and we tuck into this sweet little spot and we set up the seek.
Yep.
Which was awesome. Perfect.
Yeah, it was
spot.
a sweet little spot.
Oh,
it's
man,
like
money.
Grass. It's like a grass meadow on the side of the cliff.
Yeah, which is so rare in that country. You find a nice flat spot like that, it's just, and that's what we did. We stuck to that, and that seek never left that spot once we got it set up. So, yeah, and that was, fortunately, I think we got across that. It was dark, but it was a full moon. I mean, the moon was getting to be pretty close to full.
It was. Yeah,
so we were we could walk at night without lights anyway. So that worked out pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
But, what happened that next day? So we get up. We don't have to cover too much ground. Our plan was to not really move too deep on this ridge. Just go slow.
Yeah.
And try to see everything and try not to get our wind anywhere. Try not to spook anything. Just take it slow. We got the days to burn. So that was kind of what we wanted to do. Although, we had already shot twice, but it still wasn't affecting where we were headed. So we still felt pretty good about, going in and finding some, deer that hadn't been spooked at all.
Yeah, you kind of realize that the shooting doesn't necessarily...
Well, and where, like, Balas shot the deer just up and over, that morning, they never heard probably even any of that shot.
And so Balas shot his buck, that next morning when you and I got to the ridge, and we glassed up those bucks, we glassed up some does in the bottom, that's when that big 2 came right down on us. He saw
so
movement.
It was in the morning.
He wouldn't even leave. I mean,
no, he saw movement. So he was, his neck was swollen up, so he was starting to feel it. So he saw movement. He came right down. He was going to come down.
So yeah, I see him up there, and we're glassing these 2 bucks. I think Joe went back to get the spotter, crawled back, crawled like 5 or 6 feet back to his back, and that deer is looking down, and he sees Joe crawling.
Yeah.
And that got him all
excited.
His
neck's all swole.
I had brown pants on. I think he was like...
He came right down on that ridge, and he would not leave. He stayed there for probably 40 minutes.
Yeah, just stood there.
Licking his lips.
Yeah.
We were like, man, Balas would be happy with that.
Yeah, he was a big old thing.
Yeah.
But yeah,
So
at that point we thought, holy smokes,
You know, and
that is about as ruddy as you get. But that was really the only buck that was just rutted out of his mind.
yeah.
So, which was shocking because he was an old, mature, regressed buck. But
Well, but so you kind of realize that the shooting up in those remote places, that loud bang doesn't really blow things out.
no, and especially because we have ridges after ridges after ridges.
Yeah.
So, the bucks are in next basin over. They don't hear anything.
No, and even if they do, they hear loud noises up there. They hear thunder and
Oh yeah.
cracks. It's more it's the spreading your stink around that blows things up more than anything. Especially your stink.
We didn't really stink. I don't think.
Right.
Very
cute.
very bad. Very bad.
Oh man.
So that next day, I'm trying to think. We all stayed together the next day, I think, and we ended up climbing. That next day is when we climbed all the way up to the top. I think
we did a lot of glassing that day.
Did a lot of glassing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and after the first morning with all the bucks that we saw and the deer, we were a little bit surprised because that following day it was pretty grim.
Yeah, I mean,
we didn't see anything
much at all.
We weren't picking up, any bucks in those new basins that we hadn't even laid eyes on. So that was a little bit of a setback, but we knew they were there. We were seeing tracks. We were seeing sign. So we just the conditions were just terrible because the deer. They were moving for about an hour and a half in the morning, a little bit, like going back to their bedding area. But then all day long, they're not up. They're where they are in their beds on the shady side of the hill. And that was it. So, and even in the evenings, when you expect to get a little bit of movement.
Nothing.
Gosh, I think of the 7-8 days we were up there, there was one evening we picked up 3 does.
I saw 2 does.
That's what little movement there was.
Yeah. In the evening, yeah.
Yeah. So, no, just tough conditions. So it was basically all day long, we're looking for bedding areas, trying to pick up tines, amongst the burnt timber. And sometimes you get lucky and you find one, and sometimes you just never see them because it's too thick. But they're in there.
Yeah, which is fun. I mean, that's, to me, I enjoy glassing. It's like when I first started, I didn't really enjoy it, but now I enjoy it. Like me and you sit on the side of a mountain. It's like, okay, who's going to find the critter first? But you start staring at sticks long enough, you're thinking, there's a buck right there. I know there's a buck there. No, that stick hasn't moved.
Yeah, and you're really good. I mean, some people just don't, they have a hard time ever being able to pick up deer, but you have great eyes. You pick up a lot of critters.
I'm glad you like my eyes.
It makes it easy for me. I don't have to work so hard. It's like, I'll just kind of sit
he's
back
over there.
And let
You're
Balas
probably not
pick
even
apart the
glassing.
mountain.
You're probably just
eyes are
closed,
closed.
sleeping.
So we, I think it was the following day that we did our big old death march, wasn't it?
Yeah.
The next day we did a similar path to what we did the day before, but we just thought we'd stretch it out a little bit. And we covered a lot of ground. Not sure if we saw a deer.
I don't think so.
That entire day. We didn't pick up anything in the morning. And we thought, we'd get up on top, get a good master vantage up there, look at the other side. Man, we looked at a lot of country that day and did a lot of up and a lot of down. I don't know what the elevation up and down was that day, but it was a lot. And we ended up, fortunately, taking some of that deer that Balas shot the first day. And we hauled that, and our plan was to get a good meal that day and eat some venison. So,
and by some of my deer, we took half of an entire side of backstrap.
I don't know what we were thinking.
And the heart.
We could have eaten both straps.
Yeah.
While we were up there, we had to conserve. But no, we found a great spot, buy some water, and made a fire and cooked that right over the fire. That was awesome.
It was good. Yeah.
Brought a little seasoning and.
Yeah, we did. We had Tony. What is it? Tony
Sacheries.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, that's some good seasoning.
That was good, and we could indulge in all the water we wanted, which really, we hadn't been able to.
Couldn't.
Joey couldn't. There was There was
Freshwater shrimp.
shrimp in the lake.
And I'm sure I would be fine, but I'm allergic to shrimp. And then Ryan's like, "Oh, look at all these freshwater shrimp," and I'm thinking,
Right as you're about to take a sip of your freshly
thinking, what if that makes me sick? And then the
Worst
next
place ever.
4 days, I'm
Yeah.
in bad shape. So I did not drink that water.
You found water though.
I found water in the creek. It was just not as plentiful.
Yeah, we found that water on the north slope. It was all frozen.
Mm-hmm.
2 inches thick, that ice, or
it
maybe
was
more.
Super cold on that side, and yet all you had to do was like move over 100 yards, and you were in the
It was crazy.
dead sun, and it was hot, and you were sweating.
It's
But then
rare
just-
you find those spots that, I mean, you find those spots quite a bit in the mountains where it's like you go into them and you feel the temperature drop. But that was very
It was drastic. Yeah, for
drastic. It was like, man, we bundled up everything we had, but you could literally walk 50 yards over and walk into the sun, and it was like
Sure. Back
65.
to t-shirt weather.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah.
And that creek bottom right there was frozen, rock solid. Just never sees the
Yeah,
sun.
that was really shocking that was, the ice was as thick as it was on that lake.
Well, obviously, it'd been cold up there. There'd been some nights previously where it was wicked cold.
Yeah, we had some nights in early October. We had some weather. We had some snow up there, and then it all just went away. Early in the season, I thought we were set up for a phenomenal, regular season deer hunt. But boy, the weather changed.
We were
quick
excited
and
about
melted everything.
using the stove.
Yeah, on the Seek, but
Yeah.
didn't even need it.
No.
Mm-mm.
So we finished up that day hiking out of that hole, climbing through many, many boulder fields, which is always our favorite. Trying not to break trekking poles and all that fun stuff. And
Trying to just get up the hills.
jeez, yeah, we did a pretty serious climb up and out of there, which is pretty sketchy.
I stayed down and was filming you two.
Yeah, dodging rocks.
And these two are like, I don't know, that's a really steep hill we're on. You're pretty much bear crawling out of it or climbing out of it. So I'm down below. I'm like, oh, this will be cool to video. And I had to run a few times and dive into this little cluster of trees, and these like boulders are flying down the mountain. Like, this is probably not the best idea.
Not the best idea.
I was trying,
But
to
you got
not,
you got the footage.
I got the footage.
Yeah,
though.
that's
That's
all
what a
that-
good cameraman
I
does.
mean, if you
though.
had died,
That'd be great footage.
Yeah, it would. As long as you as you were falling, you set the camera down so it didn't damage the SD card.
Yeah. No, I would make sure to do that.
I was
Of
having to
course
watch
you
which
will.
rocks to grab onto because you could kind of feel, well, that one's loose. That
Loose.
one's going to come right whizzing by you.
Yeah.
And I watched one rock go down, and it hit a rock and shot a rock over your direction.
Yeah.
It was like 10 feet from you, but it shot one over towards you that whizzed past. And
That's that
Tamarack.
scary feeling you get, like if when you were a kid and you got like in a BB gun war and you come around a corner and there's a kid standing there with a BB gun and you turn to run and you just are like,
Where
you're
am
going
I
to get
gonna
shot.
get hit?
And that's the feeling when those rocks are coming down the hill. You're like, that's the same feeling. Like, run! I'm gonna get hit with a rock.
I'm sure everybody out there knows what it's like to have BB gun wars.
BB gun probably
Yeah.
not anymore, right?
We had lawn dart wars, pretty much.
Yeah,
back
that's
in the
why
day.
they're
That's why they're
they're banned in the United States.
Yeah. But anyway, so we got out of there that day. Gosh, what was the next day? The days all kind of run together.
Yeah.
In between there was some
We'd
pretty
split
slow.
up. That's
So the
when
next day we split up, and
That's right.
you were going way out again, and you took your sleeping bag. You're like, well, I
Yeah.
might stay out if I get too far out or if I find something good.
Yep.
So Balas and I decided to go back in to where on the way out of that nasty hole, we saw some pretty good tracks on a
Pretty dang
ridge.
good sized tracks.
Yeah. So we headed over to glass this new little piece.
And I remember saying to Joe on my way up, I was like, that little knob right there, if we see a buck on there, he's going to be probably 30 inches.
Yeah.
It's going to be
Yeah.
a huge buck. Just looks like that kind of spot.
And it is, man. You just look at it and it looks like where a big buck could just live, and there's all these different outs for him, and there's food and
It's just a small spot.
Perfect
too.
spot.
It's
And
just
it's tough-
tiny
tough to get to. I
Overlooked,
mean, it's
tough
out
to
there.
get to. Tamaracks got easy ways to get away from predators.
And lots of ways to get away.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So we started working our way over that way. And there was another knob there that kind of distracted us on the way,
Mhm.
like another little ridge that ran out. And so we were looking at that. But I think from a long ways away, probably, man, a couple thousand yards,
When we
I
first saw
looked
it.
over there. And the sun wasn't up yet, so it was still pretty dark, kind of shaded. And I just saw a deer butt right on the ridge, like right in the swale, like right where I went to first. Like there should be a deer there. Bang, there he was. Couldn't really tell how big his rack was from that distance. And we didn't have the spotter.
We didn't have the
Ryan
spotter.
had the spotter. So we boogied and we got into maybe like 700 yards.
Yeah, and I think I hadn't even seen. I still couldn't even pick up the deer. I mean, I was like, I do not see this deer.
But we boogied. Didn't really take any time to try to look at him anymore. I was just like, well, let's get closer because that's a buck. I was like, I could see his body too. I was like, that's a big, huge body. So we boogie over there and find a nice little spot, kind of sneak in and set up. And at that point, he was still in the swale. And he turned and just walked like 20 yards and bedded down. Like a little group of trees. The only little group of trees right there. And he bedded down right beside him where we could see him clear. But still, it's just tough. The light, it was hard to tell how big he was.
The sun hadn't
hit that side of the mountain. We were kind of on the dark side, on the north side. And so we watch him for all morning. And, you know, there was talk about how big he was. I was like, you know, you could see 2 big points, but you really couldn't see the whole rack.
Yeah, he wasn't really moving his head around. I mean,
no, the way he was bedded, it was just hard to tell how big he was. And but I was like, I'm just fixed on him the whole time, not taking my glasses off of him. And I saw him move just a couple times, and I was like, man, there's something about that buck. There is something up there, man. He looks, I could tell he looked heavy, but again, I was like, might be just a big 2-point.
Yeah.
Another, you know, and so we just sit and watch. And so now the sun is coming up behind us and it hits the top of this knob and it starts coming down. And it's got, you know, it takes like a half an hour and we're watching and the sun's coming down and bang, it hits him. And I'm like waiting, like the sun's going to hit him. I'm going to see what this sucker is. Boom, the sun hits him. He jumps up. Like as soon as it hit him, like a vampire, like he's going to burst into flames, jumps up and boom, goes right behind the trees. And I'm like, what the heck?
I mean, it was fast.
There's nothing. I got nothing out of that. So I'm just fixed on where he went in. I'm like, man, he must have went in and rebedded. And then boop, he pops out the top and he's walking straight up the hill in the sun, but quick. And I'm looking at him. I'm like, he's
and you
good,
can just
man.
see him just
He's
strutting
heavy.
up that hill.
He's big. His body is like fat as a cow. And he just goes straight up the mountain and boom, right over the other side.
Yeah, but he
to
got
the
up
north
and
side.
stopped. And
He
we're
stopped
just
on
like,
the top.
dude,
He's big.
that's a stud.
Yeah. And then over the other side and gone out of our lives. And I'm like,
we thought for forever.
Man, that was a good buck. And I don't think that we could have, where he was, and not knowing how to get in on that ridge, I don't think, even if we would have been able to tell how big he was, I don't think we would have been able to make a play.
Yeah, because I'm telling you, like, Joe, we've got to get in. Let's go kill that buck.
I'm like, no, we can't.
No, I was like, we got to go kill it. But
I just didn't think we could get into position on him without blowing it up.
Yeah,
and
it's
he's
kind
such
of a weird layout down there.
It is, man.
But still, we didn't even think it was that big of a buck.
I had a feeling though, because his body was so big,
but there wasn't that for sure.
Big his body was. And I've seen those deer before where you see those bodies and it's like, you got to get closer and see what they are. Cause, it's deceiving, you know? even when he's going up that hill, right? You're like, oh, he's just a good heavy buck.
Especially when they're by themselves, it's super deceiving.
Yeah.
Like if there's perspective, like there's another deer there, there's some does, another buck, like an average size buck, then it's like, holy cow, the body on that thing is huge, which is why he doesn't look giant, when you first lay eyes on him.
But anyway, so he goes over the hill. That's it. Gone. And then we pop up over the other side. We work out another ridge. We glass another area. We end up back at camp, and
I'd seen some
come
bucks.
back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had seen some bucks, and gosh, I think, that was the day I'd put that one buck to bed. I watched him down in the hole.
Yeah.
And, he looked like a pretty dang good buck, but he bedded in a weird spot. He bedded like right out in the open, but I don't know, what was that, 1,500 feet down in elevation. And right out in an open burn, but on the backside of a burnt pole. So he had some shade. Yeah,
he used that big burnt tree just kind of like his only bit of shade. And he actually repositioned when that shade would move. He'd move up just a little bit.
Well, it's like a sundial. I mean, he's just...
Like I took a picture of it, and I came back. I know you guys had gone back to camp. I got an inReach. So I went back. We met up there. And then I kind of showed you, like on my phone, well, this is where that buck is. He's right over there. Let's go look at him. Throw the spotter on him and see what you think. So that's what we did. We went up there, and actually he kind of disappeared on us for a little bit. He moved. Yeah. He had done just that. He'd moved up the hill.
And we all sat there, and we were looking.
Like 20 feet.
Looking and looking, and then we're like, you're like, he must have moved. And we're all glassing it. And then I was just like, there he is. Right there.
It was so obvious that we missed it.
Yeah.
It
so
was
weird.
Just right in the open.
But, and that was like, you weren't terribly excited about that buck.
No.
And I was just like, well, we're doing this project thing. If we, it's not that much about how big the buck is. Really, it's like, let's go look at this situation and see, is it going to be like something we can get some cool footage, the stock cool? And it was like,
it was a serious stock.
Oh, like, man.
Just how it laid out, the mountain laid out. It was going to be a long, like, hours of stock to get down there.
And once we got in there, it's just quiet, dead quiet, man. And
there's quiet as in, no wind. And
no wind. And super loud and crunchy. So
our footfalls were super loud, which
it felt like
we are watching every single step at still 800-900 yards away.
Yeah,
trying
for
not
hours.
To spook this guy out of there,
picking our way. Like, and you know how when you stalk that far, it's like you're like tense the whole time, and every step. It starts to get like
it wears on you.
You get wore out.
Oh, man, for sure.
And you guys originally, because I was up filming, we had set up a spot where I was going to film from, and you guys originally went down drainage. Mm-hmm. And you were gonna come up that ridge.
We were trying to conceal ourselves by using another ridge, so getting down below it.
Yeah. So and I couldn't see you guys at a certain point, so I'm like, oh crap, because I remember on our Idaho bear hunt. You go after that bear, and I'm filming. I'm like, crap, I lost him. And like, I'm frantically searching the hill trying to find you so I could film it. And then the next time I saw you guys, I mean, this was hours later, you were coming down. So what did you guys do?
Thanks for listening to this podcast, everybody. It's part 1 of Ryan's Washington mule deer hunt 2018. It was a pretty long podcast, so we split it into 2. So make sure the next podcast is part 2 of this story, where you'll hear more and it will come to a close. All right. Thanks for listening.